honoring family and following Jesus' call, it's not always simple, right? It's not just cut and dry. This is what you do. There's complexity tied within this. We are exploring what faithfulness looks like, and not forcing a decision or dismissing your family's concerns in any capacity.
Is it possible that your family is a barrier to fully following Jesus in your calling? Okay, even mentioning that as a possibility might step on some toes. I want to acknowledge that right off the bat. It also just makes me a little uncomfortable even saying it. Our conversation today is not an attempt to pit you against your parents or other family members, not at all. But it is an invitation to examine if there are family expectations or priorities that we bring to the table that might prevent us from fully saying yes to Jesus. And then to consider what it might look like to thoughtfully honor our parents while still purposefully prioritizing obedience to Jesus, especially when it comes to our calling. Thankfully, our two experts, Joanne and Lucas, have returned and are going to continue guiding us through our exploration of 4 common barriers of calling. Let's dive in and discuss family. Welcome to After 4, your podcast for navigating life after graduation. I'm your host and guide, John Steele, and this one's for you, alumni. Joanne and Lucas, welcome back.
Back at it again.
It's a pleasure to be with you. Yeah, it's good to be here again.
Yes. So we're talking about barriers in our calling, and people can get a little bit more of an intro if they go back and listen to the previous episode. But this is our second conversation together, and we're stepping into a new barrier. So tell me, what is the barrier that we're addressing today?
It's funny because the barrier that we're going to address is actually family. And what is it that our family, how does that family play a role in any calling that we might have, right? If it's with ministry or even in the marketplace, how does family come into play into that? And where is that fear when it comes to, will my family approve? Will my family support me? Will my family agree that I might have to move? Will my all of those things play into what does it look like to honor our family in the process? Yeah.
Boy, I feel like we have the potential to be maybe stepping on some toes here, even just by acknowledging that family might be a barrier. Like that feels like something that people could kind of like bristle at a little bit. So I'm very interested to see where we go with this conversation today.
And I think in the spirit of how we closed out last week's episode of, hey, let's be real. I'll just name on the front end, like honoring family and following Jesus' call. It's not always simple, right? It's not just cut and dry. This is what you do. There's complexity tied within this, right? So I want to make sure we name that on the front end, but I do think the posture that we want to enter in with today is that we are exploring what faithfulness looks like, and not forcing a decision or dismissing your family's concerns in any capacity. Yeah. What does faithfulness look like? That's the posture and tone that I hope we address this with today.
Yeah. Yeah, because I could just let me start off with my own story. Right? Did my family understand my calling? No. And I still think they don't understand. And I've been in ministry for 34 years. Is it for me to have them understand? No, but they do support me, right? So there is something about the level of, will my family ever understand the decision I made to go into ministry? I don't think that's my job. Yeah. But I honor my family in the process. And I've honored them in all the ways that how I do my work. You know, I think about when my mom would speak so proudly about my job, and yet I knew she had no understanding of the job I did. She would so proudly talk about my daughter. Oh, my daughter, she works for this thing called InterVarsity. That's her accent at the time. And, but she didn't understand what I did with students. She had no idea of what I did, but yet she knew that I was following Jesus, and that was enough for her. But she had this misunderstanding, not understanding at all of what I did, but she knew I was following Jesus, and that was enough for her to know.
Yeah. Yeah,
Lucas, your family must have been very excited, right, for you to come on staff?
Oh, yes. Yeah, they heard that I was going to come on staff and not know where my paycheck was coming from each month, and they were stoked. No, which I think I might have maybe a little bit of a fascinating twist. I'm actually an only child, and so my mom, love her so dearly. I am a mama's boy through and through. She was so concerned. Okay, I get you really like doing this ministry thing, Lucas, but have you thought about going into the marketplace? You're getting a marketing degree. Have you thought about getting a nice, stable paycheck each month? Again, my mom didn't fully understand maybe that I was truly pursuing what I believe God was calling me to. But similar to your story, Joanne, she supports me. Both of my parents support me. They didn't quite understand it. I think my mom still maybe sometimes questions, like, why would you not just take the security?
Yeah.
But yeah, especially as an only child, they wanted to make sure I was well, I was able to take care of myself, however that may be, financially, holistically, mentally, whatever it may be. They just want what's best for me. And so, yeah, that was definitely some tension that I had with with my mom specifically when I made this decision. No, this is what I want to do occupationally.
Well, I can speak to even outside of ministry, but like before I joined InterVarsity staff, I was adjunct faculty at a university, and I had moved like really far away from home to go to my master's program. And when I decided to accept an invitation to be an adjunct faculty, it meant that I was not going back home. And so even that, like, it was just the tension of like, wait, so you're not like going to move back and be close to us again? You're still going to be hours and hours away from home and not really even knowing like what the direction is. So even I felt that tension of like, am I really going to say yes to a job that is going to keep me far away from my family for even longer than I thought was going to happen? So yeah, ministry or not, which is, the sort of the broad umbrella that a lot of our conversations are falling under, is like whether you're considering ministry or something in the marketplace or something totally different than either of those things, that we can feel these tensions and these barriers in each of those places. And so what does it look like for us to navigate those things well?
Here's the thing that I think that we forget, that God is not only doing something in us, but he's also doing something in our family.
Oh,
right.
Wow.
And so
Totally.
the place of this honoring and understanding, it's kind of like, what are you doing in me and what are you doing in them? And that's actually the work that God is doing on both ends, right? And I have to lean into both of those. And I also need to lean in not to try to control both of those.
Yes. Each time that we meet together here, you have some scripture for us to consider as a place for us to enter in and think like, where's the Lord at work? And where have we seen this before in places that we can trust and that we can draw from? So take us to scripture for this conversation around family.
Yeah, we'll be diving into Luke 2, verses 41 to 52. Every year, Jesus' parents went to Jerusalem for the Passover festival. When Jesus was 12 years old, they attended the festival as usual. After the celebration was over, they started home to Nazareth. But Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem. His parents didn't miss him at first because they assumed he was among the other travelers. But when he didn't show up that evening, they started looking for him among their relatives and friends. When they couldn't find him, they went back to Jerusalem to search for him there. 3 days later, they finally discovered him in the temple, sitting among the religious teachers, listening to them, and asking questions. All who heard him were amazed at his understanding and his answers. His parents didn't know what to think, though. "Son," his mother said to him, "why have you done this to us? Your father and I have been frantic, searching for you everywhere." "But why did you need to search?" Jesus asked. "Didn't you know that I must be in my father's house?" But they didn't understand what he meant. Then he returned to Nazareth with them and was obedient to them. And his mother stored all these things in her heart. Jesus grew in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and all the people. How much you want to unpack there to begin with, Joanne? Because I think a lot of what we have shared within our story so far is like, oh, yeah, okay, so Jesus quite literally walked through this reality.
I mean, it's a very, right, talk about Mary and Joseph not understanding at all. And well, let's go back to the reality. Like, they don't realize he's missing. Anyway, I just was like, he's 12. You don't leave a middle schooler by themselves. You have to know where they are at all times.
This is not the era of helicopter parenting.
Yeah, right.
No, it's not. Which tells you about the community, right? How much Mary and Joseph depended on the community that Jesus would be okay. And so, but there's this whole element of the family doesn't understand. What do you mean, Mary? So it's kind of like there's this interesting, there's an interesting dialogue between the two and you see the unfolding of not understanding. They don't understand this earthly and heavenly call. And so it's very interesting how this unfolds in the process where both Mary and Joseph have this miraculous experience with God when Jesus is being born. And we'll discuss that a little bit more when it comes to future. But there is something very fascinating that they completely don't understand the call that Jesus has on his life. And I think about even this earthly and heavenly, this earthly and heavenly call. There's this like, your father and I, right? They're taking, Mary's like, excuse me, Jesus, we don't know where you were. And he's like, I'm in my father's house, which is father with a capital F, right? So he's talking about the heavenly Father. Yep. And there's a tension between the two, especially when you live in a community where the 10 Commandments were very, very present, very understanding, right? The honoring of parents was very highly, yet God's calling is at the same time. So there is this tension between the two of what does that look like? I don't know, Luke. Lucas, what other ones do you have? Because this is like too much.
It's a lot. It's a lot, right? And I think I love Jesus' response to what you've named as well, right? The earthly versus the heavenly call. We see Jesus both act in faithfulness and in honor to his parents as well. He goes home and he is obedient in 51, right? He returned to Nazareth with them and was obedient to them. And I think the next sentence too, it just makes me stop in amazement. As I was reading it, even I'm like, that's rich. And his mother treasured all these things in her heart. You talked about how Jesus is doing something in the midst of your family as well, when they might not fully understand why you're pursuing this calling Jesus has laid on your heart. Mary is clearly being transformed in the midst of this as well. She's holding all these things like maybe I don't understand, but would God actually do something in my heart as I'm navigating this uncertainty, this like disbelief of why are you gone? Why aren't you with us? Why are you still here? Why are you engaging with all these teachers of the law and engaging with all of their questions with such like deep understanding that we may or may not have actually fully known? I think to see Mary's posture in the midst of it as well is something that, again, I read it and I stopped and I'm like, wow, she truly cared. It wasn't just like deep concern, get back here. No, it seems to me she's making a conceited effort to understand.
Yeah, the thing about, I find that verse is in 51, right? Mary treasures all these things in her heart. Like you could just imagine the beauty of that for her to hold on to that, to keep that in her heart, to know that my son has a calling that's very different that I don't understand, but I'm going to hold on to that. I'm going to trust in the God who called him, trust in that which is, as a mom myself, I have to believe that the plans that God has for my children are plans to not to harm them, but for a future. And so I hold on to that, right? Mary was entrusted with Jesus. There is no other thing to say. He was entrusted to her. Yeah. And so I hold that to the same thing. Like my family, I've been entrusted to them by God, and they have to do the process of trusting God and then trusting that God is also speaking to me in the process, right? So there's this beautiful picture of Mary understanding what was been entrusted to her. That's very profound. That we don't even sometimes comprehend the depth of that. Not only saying yes, I'll hold them, I'll give birth to the Messiah.
Yeah.
But what came with that was all the rest of it that she trusted in her heart deeply.
Yeah, and I love that as Jesus always finds a way to do, like he avoids like there's either option A or there's option B, and he finds a way to like cut through those. And it's not just like, well, I've got to choose here. Do I honor my capital F father, or do I
honor my earthly mother and father. And he's like, no, I can do both of these things at the same time. It might require a little bit of fancy footwork, but he's also Jesus, so he can do that stuff really well. For the rest of us, it might require a little extra pondering to figure out what that looks like, but that there is a way to like keep honor and faithfulness together in the midst of those things. And that's just that's encouraging to me to know that it isn't just an either or.
Yeah, I do agree. Yeah, go ahead, Lucas.
I was just going to say, and I think we talked about it even at the end of our last episode in regards to inadequacies or general fears. Like Mary's posture still reflects hope moving forward as well. Like we do fortunately have the hindsight of knowing like she does become a faithful disciple of Jesus, and I think that's so reflective of how I hope and pray families can continue growing over time in accepting calling of their children, wherever it may be. I don't know if what you were going to share was going to tie into that, Joanne, but I just wanted to make sure we like really put the nail in on that, because man, I do think it's important we hold on to hope here throughout the process.
I mean, hope in the sense of that to me is like, right, there is, it has to develop. Like, I think we think hope comes in one instant, but her hope was an ongoing development that throughout her journey, like this woman had hope and it was an ongoing development in her. So I think about my family, the hopes that they had for me in my decision to come into full-time ministry. Did the hopes that they had for me diminish? Actually, no, they came to fruition, but there was somewhere in the process, my mom had to, just kind of like the control of the process, because I think that's the process, that's the posture sometimes that I find with our family, is this level of wanting to control the outcomes. And yet, if my mom began to put her hope into the process that God was taking me, and she also had to release and relinquish the control that could come about with this process. And so honoring and the honoring and being faithful to God, that duality between the two creates hope in Mary that is we would not probably expect to see happen, but it does result in the hope that she has and that she believes in God to do.
So then as we start turning this towards us, towards our listeners even further, how is it that we start, what recommendations do you have as far as starting to think through what does it look like if this is a barrier that I'm encountering? Well, what do I do next? What encouragements do you have for people here?
I'll maybe start with this one, because I don't know if we touched on this maybe as directly in regard to the scripture, but I do think Jesus acknowledges he avoids this us versus them mentality, right? Like you said, John, it's not one side or the other. Shoot it straight down the middle. And I think that's one thing where, especially as we're discussing calling with our family, avoiding that us versus them posture. I think that's the first tip that I would 100% throw out there. I think most families, they want to object out of love and legitimate concern, whatever it may be. Again, for my mom, are you sure, Lucas? Like, are you sure you want to go through the process of having a limited paycheck because we don't know who's going to partner with you, where your funds will be coming from? Are you sure about that? And it's because she loves me, because she cares for me. But I know I made a very intentional effort to not make it a me versus my mom. I had done that in the past, and I will tell you what, it did not go very well.
Never works out. It's never a good idea.
Unfortunately, never works out. I couldn't bring a car to college my freshman year. Oh, it was me versus mom at that point, right? Even just small things like that, but especially as we're discerning calling, avoiding the me versus family, the us versus them mentality, I think is something that Jesus reflects within the passage.
And even to the example of distance, right? It's not me versus my mom, like, oh, you're living far away from me. Oh, how could you not want to be with me? Because that's the comments that I would hear, right? You don't want to live near me? You don't want to come? I'm like, no, Mom, it's not that. And then trying to actually figure out what is the fear she has in the process of my lack of distance, right? Mom, I'm still going to be connected to you. Mom, I'm still going to come visit. Mom, there is these elements of to be concrete of the next steps that I will do to help minimize that fear that comes with it, right? So it's not that we're against you, Mom. It's not that we're going to, right? So how do I then come back to really looking at what is the actual thing that you're afraid of, and let's talk about it. Let's come up with some concrete steps, Mom. What does that look like? You're still coming for Christmas? Yes, Mom, I'm still coming for Christmas. Yes, Mom, my phone still works from a distance. I still can use Zoom to talk to you, right?
Yeah.
Those are the kinds of things that being proactive to think about what is the thing that actually is the value system? What's the value that is really the fear underneath when family is up opposing to you? What's the thing that they really speak of? So I think about it from my kids. Like, my kids know that wherever they decide to do, I still love them. I want them to know that I'm blessing them to go. And I then need to be aware of, what am I projecting in the process? What's the thing that I'm projecting, so that my daughters would know that actually I want to bless you to go. I want to bless you to go. And so the conversation really is there. And I have to be okay to know that there's validity in the pain. The pain is real.
Mm-hmm.
The pain is not that, I think about Mary's situation. That pain was very real for her. And eventually in the scriptures, we see how that pain really does become very real. Yeah. And the cost of Jesus' calling caused her deep pain. And so I wouldn't want to minimize that, and I don't want to over spiritualize it. Pain is real, and it causes us to have to lean into the Lord in a different way that we don't even sometimes understand. So yes, I don't understand everything, but it causes me pain, yes. And then I'm going to turn to the Lord in that pain and say, Lord, would you come? So my calling could create objections from my family, and it causes pain, and I need to be okay with that.
Yeah.
And I think too, not only acknowledging that, continuing to, I'll say, like, personally dialogue with Jesus about that as well. But I think continuing to do follow up with your family even after an initial conversation as well. Joanne, you named it within the text, right? It was not just like a one time and hope is here, right? It is an ongoing thing. And so I think there's an element of, like, we can continue processing with our families in regards to all this as well. They can continue processing together with you. And like, and maybe that's even like, you can tie that into a concrete next step of like, hey, can we keep this an open conversation? Like, are you okay if I actually bring this up next week? Like, I just want to continue dialoguing about it with you. And I think the more willing we are to step into dialogue, maybe fearfully, but being acknowledging like pain and fear in the midst of that as well, right? That's going to be a common theme I think we continue tapping into throughout this series is, what can the Holy Spirit do? What can Jesus do in the midst of the fear, the pain, through all of these barriers in discerning calling?
Yeah.
I would also add that for me, I probably couldn't have that dialogue with my mom directly. Because I knew that was not going to be received by my mom in a way that was like, no. Right? I could just hear her, and I could see that. Well, some of the things that I did was expose her to the ministry that I actually was a part of, right? So how do you expose your parents to the work that God might be calling you to? So I think to be aware of, how do you talk about your work around your family?
Yeah.
Oh, I can't deal with this anymore, right? Yeah. That type of dialogue is not helpful for a family who loves you and cares for you.
Yeah.
But what does it look like for me to say, hey, Mom, I just saw a student be transformed with the gospel. What happened? Right. So I'm becoming a witness. So where do I vent about my work is really important, because if my family hears me venting, I can't deal with these deadlines. My boss is driving me crazy. And why then are you there? Right. So there is a posture of knowing that what we share with our family might not be the best place to talk about it. And so what is it that how do we testify of the work that we've been called by God in a way, not that we are lying about it, but we actually know where to be able to speak of the goodness of the process of it that really is helpful, because these are the people that love you the most. They have their best interest for you. And so keeping that in mind to know how do we talk about our work is really important.
Yeah.
That's good.
And I like the way how you, again, following up in regards to like just talking in general about it, right? Because you talk, how do we expose our families to this? I mean, it's easy for me. I shouldn't say easy for me, but like one way that I've done that as on staff specifically that I recognize isn't as applicable across the board is like when we have volunteer opportunities, I say, hey, mom, dad, come participate, come see what God is doing in these students around me. And I understand there's probably little to no bring your parent to work days that exist out there, right? So it's not like it's not easy to just throw them in. Hey, come watch me sit at my desk and crank out these Excel sheets all day, right? But I love that you named that, Joanne, of like we can have creative conversations in different ways with our families that isn't just let's set a concrete date and do this around dinner again, right? How do we actually present the work that God has called us into with our families in multiple conversations that follow?
And I would say added to that, right? Because I think that I never wanted to make a decision on my own without including my family in the dialogue, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that for me to honor them was to say, hey, let me invite you a little bit into the process of my decision making, which was not that they were making the decision, but they were involved in the decision making. Right. So I think this passage was very interesting that Jesus doesn't say, oh, mom, dad, I'm going to stay here for a little bit. I'm going to invite you in. Right. But in the process, though, he honors them in that. And so I think for me, I think about where are the places where I invite my family now that I'm an adult and I have my husband and other folks. How do I invite them into the process of decision making? So even now, as I'm in this position with InterVarsity and been on staff for 34 years, I include my daughters in my process of decision making, right? So my next career move, I invited them in and I said, what do you think? Should mama do this? Yeah. Should mama be taking this role in? And they actually were like, well, mom, this. And they were very clear about what I shouldn't be doing or should be doing. And I took that into consideration. And then I said, what if I did this? And they're like, that sounds good. And that sounds like a good decision. And even the person who was hiring me, I actually said, I need to consult with my family. Because, it helped them to understand that they may not have a say, but they play a part in my role. And so I wonder what type of, what if in our decision making, when we take a role or we take a position, what would it say to what would it say to the marketplace? What would it say to people around us that I need to consult with other folks in the process? We would be against the grains of our culture if we began to do something like that, to say, I need to find a little bit more, consult with other folks in this process. Because we're not an island. We live with other people. We live in community. We live with other folks. And for some, it might not be your spouse. It might be your friends. That might be your family, and you need to keep that in mind.
Totally. Yeah.
What are your friend communities saying to you in this process? Because you live with those people. You do life within that community, and that community has a lot to say about them. And pay attention to them.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful because this is not the case for everybody. I recognize that, but for many of us, I mean, our parents have been some of our most trusted confidants throughout the early stages of our lives. And so to feel like I've reached a point where I can no longer trust my parents' input is like just painful and silly and unnecessary. Now, you may have to enter into a new level of sort of sifting through the input that they give you. But to say, I've been able to trust you for my entire life, like, can you just help me talk through this? And I think that is an amazing, a really like an honoring and just wise perspective to have. Like, they've provided a lot of insight in the past, and why would I think that they wouldn't have helpful insight? Because they know me better than so many people. And how can I invite them into just helping me see some of these things? And we talked about that before, like for the previous fear. What does it look like to invite people in and say, what do you notice about me? That is helpful or not helpful for this particular avenue. And they know us. They know us so well. Joanne and Lucas, I wonder, do you have any, we've talked a lot of practical, helpful tips. Do you have just a final word of encouragement that you would offer to our young alumni as they think about engaging with family as they make some of these decisions?
And I'll keep mine short and simple because I think this is something that I've been holding on to. As Joanne, you mentioned, like, okay, as I looked at my next role, I consulted my daughters. I recently took a new role within an university in the Metro Minnesota area as associate area director. My regional director wisely told me, make sure you consult your wife. It was on the radar, but even in dialoguing with her, right, misunderstanding or not even fully understanding the full picture, like, does not equate to opposition at the same time either. So it does not mean when my wife didn't fully understand, okay, I understand promotion sounds nice, but okay, but why shift campuses? Why shift ministry focus? Why? She's not opposing me in any way. It's just, she just needs more details, needs more understanding. And so I think as we continue to have conversations with our families, whether that is parents, friends, spouses, children, whoever it may be, misunderstanding does not equate to opposition. And I want to make sure we enter in with that and fully understand that as well, because I think it does help us frame the way in which we dialogue moving forward.
Yeah, and I would probably say that faithfulness to the Lord is important. And so what is it the Lord is calling you to be faithful to? And it could be that maybe you might have to pause that job because out of faithfulness to what God might be calling you to your family, right? So I think that we live with a sense that this is it, I got to do it now. And actually, maybe the right thing to do is to be faithful to your family and not do the thing and maybe wait. And so I would encourage you to lean into, what is God calling me to be faithful to?
Yeah.
And it's not to the job, it's not to the family, it's to Him. And what does that look like in the process as you discern, as you face the fear of opposition? Like, what, Lord, you're calling me to be faithful to you in this process. And it's not to a job, it's not to my family, it's faithful to you and to your calling. And what would that be? And the calling could be something else, but just leaning into that faithfulness of, God, you've called me.
Alumni, I am so grateful for Joanne and Lucas's posture in this conversation. More than likely, in fact, almost certainly, any concerns or objections that your family might have to the calling that you sense the Lord has placed on your life is coming from a place of love. Now, it might also be coming from a place of fear. And as Joanne reminded us, the Lord isn't just at work in you in this process. He is at work in your family as well. What if your obedience to Jesus is meant to provide an opportunity for your family to meet Him in new ways, to trust Him more deeply, and to partner with you in trusting that His calling in your life is purposeful and good, even if it might also be a little scary at times. But as we discussed last week, we can trust Him in the midst of those fears. Be patient with your family, be gentle with your family, and keep chatting with them as you continue to discern how the Lord is inviting you to say yes to Him. It's extremely possible that what once felt like a barrier might turn into one of your strongest partnerships and support systems, which is exactly what your family longs to be in the first place. I am absolutely sure of that. Joanne and Lucas, thank you so much for joining us and for offering your insights on this topic. Alumni, come back next week for our third discussion in the Barriers series. It is a doozy. We're talking about finances. How do our concerns about money and finances sometimes stand in the way of following Jesus in our calling? Until then, consider sharing this episode with someone who needs to hear it, and I will see you in the after, alumni. Thanks for listening to After 4. This podcast is brought to you by the InterVarsity Alumni Relations Team, hosted and produced by John Steele, production assistance by Mike Zentera, edited by Caleb Leppert, and our After 4 theme music was written and performed by John Steele.